Hello and welcome. Today we are diving deep into something we do every single day, something so fundamental we barely even think about it, communication. But here's the thing, it's so much more than just talking and listening. It's literally the foundation of everything we build, our relationships, our careers, and our entire society.
And hey, welcome back. This is the second explainer in our series all about communication. In this one, we're going to unpack its real meaning, its purpose, and why it is just so incredibly important. We're going to break down why getting this right is an absolute game changer for every part of your life. All right, let's get into it.
So, here's the plan. First, we'll tackle what communication actually is. Then, we'll look at how it works under the hood and what we're trying to do when we communicate. After that, we'll see where it shows up in our lives, talk about the barriers that trip us all up, and, most importantly, the skills to get past them. We'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways.
Okay, Section 1. So what is communication really? I think for a lot of us, our default definition is just sending a message. You talk, I listen. But it's so much deeper and more human than that. You know, the biggest clue is right there in the word's origin. Communication comes from the Latin word communis, and that means common. So the real goal isn't just to talk at somebody, it's to create something in common. It's about building a shared idea, a shared thought, or a shared understanding. It's all about getting on the same page. I love this definition because it nails two absolutely critical words, create and mutual understanding. It's not just a simple transfer of data. It's a creative act where two people are actively building meaning together. And if that mutual understanding doesn't happen, well, you could argue that real communication didn't even take place.
And that really highlights this huge shift in how we think about it. The old school transmission model was super mechanical, right? Like a radio signal. A sends a message to B. Done. But the modern view gets that we're not machines, we're human. The goal is that shared meaning. The receiver isn't just a passive target, they are an active co-creator in the whole process.
Just think about this for a second. Imagine I say the phrase, "That was interesting." Now, if I say it with a big smile right after you give a presentation, it's a compliment, for sure. But what if I say it like this? "That was interesting," with a flat tone and a raised eyebrow. Totally different meaning, right? It's sarcastic, maybe even a little insulting. The words are exactly the same, but the tone, the context, it changes everything. That's why just sending a message isn't enough. Interpretation is the whole game. All right, so if it's all about co-creating this shared meaning, how does that actually happen? What does the process look like? Let's pop the hood and look at the components. So it all starts with a sender who has an idea. They have to encode that idea into a message. Put it into words or gestures, or maybe a drawing. That message then travels through a channel, like me speaking or you reading an email. The receiver gets it and then has to decode it to interpret its meaning. And this is key. The loop only closes when the receiver gives feedback, which lets the sender know if they understood. It's this continuous, flowing cycle. But, and this is a big but, this cycle is never happening in a perfect, quiet bubble. There are always two powerful, invisible forces at play. The first is context. That's the who, what, where, and why of it all. The relationship you have with the person completely changes the meaning. And then there's noise. And by noise, I mean anything that gets in the way of the message. It could be physical noise, like a loud cafe, or it could be psychological noise, like you're just too stressed out to really listen. Okay, so we know what communication is, and we know how the process works. But that brings up a really big question. Why? Why do we even do it? What are we trying to accomplish every time we open our mouths or send a text? Generally, our reasons for communicating boil down to four main categories. We're trying to inform someone, to build relationships, to persuade them, or simply to express ourselves. And as you can see, informing and building relationships take up a huge chunk of our day-to-day interactions. But persuasion and self-expression are also incredibly important. Let's dig into those top three a little more.
First up, the most straightforward one, to inform. This is communication at its most practical. It's a professor explaining a concept, a doctor giving you instructions for a prescription, or your boss laying out the plan for a new project. The main goal here is just clarity, pure and simple, getting an idea from one brain into another intact.
Next, and honestly just as important, is building relationships. We are social animals through and through, and communication, well, it's the glue that holds all of our social connections together. When you ask, "How was your day?" or you apologize, or you give someone a word of encouragement, you're not just sharing data. You are tending to a social bond. You're showing you care. It's how we build our tribe. And the third major purpose is to persuade. This is all about influence. You see it everywhere, in advertising, in political speeches, even when you're just trying to convince your friends which movie to see. Now, it's really important to remember persuasion has a light side and a dark side. It can be ethical, based on logic and respect, or it can be manipulative, using deception. It's a seriously powerful tool, and with it comes a lot of responsibility.
So we've got the what, the how, and the why. But let's bring all this theory down to earth. Where does this stuff actually matter? Let's get practical and look at the absolutely critical role communication plays in the biggest areas of your life.
In your personal life, with your friends and family, communication is literally everything. And here's something fascinating. Every single thing you say operates on two levels at once. There's the content level. That's just the literal words you're saying. But underneath that, there's always the relationship level, what your message implies about your connection. If you say, "You're late," the content is simple. But how you say it, your tone, your body language, that communicates volumes about how you're feeling and the state of your relationship.
Now think about education. Communication is the absolute engine of learning. I mean, what is teaching if not communication? And you can't learn without it. For any student, success is directly tied to their ability to listen carefully to a lecture, to speak up in a discussion, to really understand a textbook, and to write clearly. These are not soft skills, they are fundamental academic tools.
And of course, in the professional world, at work, communication is the lifeblood of any organization. You have your formal communication, the official reports, the big meetings, the company policies that keep everything structured. But just as vital is all the informal communication, the quick chat by the coffee machine, the brainstorming with a colleague. That's what builds teamwork, sparks innovation, and creates a culture where people actually want to work. You need both to thrive.
Now let's zoom out even further. On a societal level, communication shapes, well, everything. Our culture, our public awareness. Mass media, from the nightly news to your social media feed, tells us what to think about, influences our opinions, and can even mobilize massive groups of people into action. It's no exaggeration to say that a healthy, functioning democracy absolutely depends on responsible, ethical communication.
Okay, if communication is this important, this vital to every part of our lives, why is it so hard? Why does it go wrong so often? Let's shift gears and talk about the real-world challenges, the barriers that get in our way, and more importantly, the skills we can learn to knock them down.
I mean, it's a question we've all asked, right? Why didn't they get what I was saying? Or how did that conversation get so off track? The reason is that the path from my brain to your brain, from my idea to your understanding, is full of potential potholes.
And these barriers, this noise, can come in a lot of different flavors. You've got physical barriers, which are obvious, a bad cell connection, a noisy room. Then there are semantic barriers. That's when we use jargon or words that are just unclear and the other person is left scratching their head. Psychological barriers are all the stuff happening inside our own heads, stress, biases, and assumptions that color everything we hear. Cultural barriers pop up when our social norms just don't align. And in the workplace, you can have organizational barriers where rigid hierarchy literally stops information from getting where it needs to go.
Let's just zero in on one of the biggest ones, psychological noise. This is all that internal chatter, the assumptions we're making, the stress we're feeling, the fact that we're already planning what we're going to say next instead of actually listening. It completely blocks true understanding. So what's the fix? Well, it takes two powerful skills, active listening and empathy. Active listening means you are 100% focused on them, not on yourself. And empathy is the work of genuinely trying to see the world from their point of view. Together, these two skills can cut right through all that internal noise.
Whew, we have covered a ton of ground, from the deep roots of what communication means all the way to the everyday barriers that trip us up. So let's boil it all down. What are the absolute essentials you need to walk away with?
All right, here are your key takeaways. Number 1, communication is not a one-way street. It's a dynamic, two-way dance of creating shared meaning. Number 2, we do it for 4 main reasons: to inform, to relate, to persuade, and to express. 3, this is not a soft skill. It is a foundational skill for success in absolutely every part of your life. And finally, number 4, and this is the best news, getting better at communication isn't magic. It's about consciously building skills to overcome those barriers.
And that really brings us to the final, most important question, the one for you to think about. After all this, what's one small thing you can do differently? Is there one barrier you want to focus on breaking down? Or one skill you want to start practicing? How are you going to communicate more effectively starting today?
Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you got something out of it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd like, share, and subscribe for more. And I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this down in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.